always trying to make it better for you guys is the main goal. But
Mm, mm.
I guess the first sort of question I have for you, and it's going to be it's either a long stretch back for when we actually first started together in face to face, or I think probably a more realistic position would be the last sort of six. It's been 6 months or a year. Or how long has it been since?
It would be basically the last quarter of last year, I'd say. I think it was
Yeah,
probably about September, October of last year.
yeah, perfect. Okay, so really, it's like what was sort of happening in your training or physique that made you realize that you needed something to change?
Oh, well, when I was at my heaviest, I got to, for me, very heavy. I think at 90, 92, 93 kilos, something like that, where I got my
Yep.
heaviest. It's sort of accretional, happens very slowly. And probably exercise opposed, diet, sneaking drinks and things like that. The calories just run away from you. And I
Mm,
was just getting to the point where I think I was heavy enough and unfit enough that it was actually making daily things more difficult. And I thought, geez, I live in Heidelberg, there are hills.
yeah.
And honestly, like it got to the point where I was much more aware of that.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't really just physical, it was psychological as well. I was feeling
Yeah.
very restless and uncomfortable in my own skin. Not so much from a physical self-consciousness point of view, but almost as if there was unburned energy. I was not getting as much out of my days. And I just thought, I wasn't confident it was necessarily all exercise, and it hasn't been, but I was suspicious it was a big part of it because in the past, when I've been very fit, I've just been better. I've found things easier to deal with. And I mean
Mm,
things completely unrelated to physicality. I mean my professional life, dealing with family, like
yep.
these boys that you just saw are very demanding. And I just went, look, I'm going to do this to an extreme level, because when I say extreme, I'm going to go at this very, very, very diligently, because I need it to be like that for me to properly engage. I'm not good at
Yeah.
sort of, as you know, I'm not really one to sort of half do it. I
Yep.
won't do it then. If I'm
Yep.
going to half do it, I just won't do it.
Yeah. And I think that's important as well you know, to know that there is a period where you do have to go all in if you want the results. And the results speak for themselves with yourself. And that shows the level of effort and time that you sacrifice to get there. And now with this current physique that you've developed, you have essentially unlocked this balance and flexibility that everyone's
Mm,
chasing, because now you have this great foundation that, oh, I understand the small changes in nutrition, I understand the training aspect, and having me in the background as accountability just keeps
mm.
you able to. And now you can enjoy those drinks and the food out and all that and not be feel like it's sort of slowing you down. Is that true as well?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I'd probably challenge the word sacrifice. I don't really think it was more about routine and regularity. I
Yeah.
don't remember anything too extreme at any one point. There was probably a
Mm.
period there during the cut where I wouldn't say I felt like I was sacrificing a lot, but you are starting to deal with a bit of pushback from your body.
Yeah.
But because it's part of a process, by the time that's starting to happen, you're already starting to see some progress, some reward, which is its own reward,
Mhm.
and so it's self motivating. The early phase, it's not too bad. So my approach was less about, oh, I've got to sacrifice and that. It was more about putting in a particular priority. So I actually said to Penny, she's been very good about it, my wife, and I said, listen, this is going to sound extreme, but if I'm going to do this, it's going to have to irrationally be, for a period of time, irrationally be, believe it or not, the highest priority, which
Yeah.
sounds very selfish. However, I believe that over time, while it still can be an annoyance at times if I'm needing to train at certain times that aren't
Mm.
necessarily ideal, I try to fit it around the family as much as I can. Overall, once you get into that routine, if you've made it a big priority, then you really inculcate it into the regularity of your day. It doesn't seem nearly as much of a sacrifice
Yeah.
as you might think. And for me, it was I never do anything extreme when I
Mm.
run or train. The reason I like working with you is that it's a scientific approach.
Yeah.
The number of people I see go to some of these CrossFit places and stuff, which are great or
Yeah.
whatever, but you just see these guys who are, I wouldn't say especially conditioned. I don't mean that to be condescending or critical, but see them work unbelievably hard to the point
Mm.
where I think they need an ECG monitor on. Like
Yeah.
you just think, and you think, well, why is that? Do I need to do that in order to get
Mm,
these achievements? The answer is no, no. In fact, it can be counterproductive.
yeah.
It's regularity and doing it to a scientific principle where you get the results. It's all about routine.
Yeah. And sort of thinking back to when you were at your sort of heaviest and things were sort of starting to feel, day to day, I want to sort of get into, I guess, your mind a bit more of like when you looked in the sort of the mirror, what were sort of the conversations were you sort of having with yourself?
Adrian, I cope by not looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
It's too upsetting.
Yeah. So I
That
guess
sounds
that's
extreme. It was.
no, no, but that says enough.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
point that you're at. So it's like, well, that's an important step that I think a lot of guys neglect is the fact that, if you can't even, face yourself in the mirror or in
Yeah,
photos and
that's
stuff
right.
like that, well, there's something there that you need to go, like you said, have a somewhat extreme approach to fix that because that's a big, a big issue for anything as far as the self confidence.
Oh yeah. Look, I guess I'm at a stage in my life now where I don't think it was massively impacting my self confidence. It certainly can, but what I will say, I wouldn't say I lacked self confidence then. I've always never really had that issue per
No.
se. But what I will say is that there's a certain ease in myself and in social settings and things that I didn't realize I could tap into, which has
Mm,
come from the fitness. So I would never say that I was down, or I certainly didn't like the way I looked in the mirror or whatever, but I'd found a rationale and an excuse as to why that was just the way
yeah.
it was. I've got too much on my plate and all those sorts of
Yeah.
things, not knowing that once you get yourself more fit, I hate to say it, but it does impact the way people receive you. It
Yeah.
does.
No, absolutely it does.
There's a
Yeah.
certain the way you move and things. That's what people started to comment on is even your workplace. So you just I don't know, you move differently. There's
Yeah.
there's a certain level of confidence there, which I unlocked by going through this process. So while I wasn't lacking self confidence, I think it did unduly influence the way that I interacted day to day. Whether you're a bit more guarded, you're a bit more restless, you're just
Yeah.
just uneasy in yourself.
Mm,
Where when you're fit and you feel good in yourself, not just from a vanity point of view, but your body feels responsive. It's almost like it's something an next thing you don't have to worry about, and then
yeah.
you can put more time and effort into the things that you're actually focusing in on a day to
Yeah.
day. It's funny the way it works. It really is. There
It's
is no
bizarre.
separation between body and mind. There is
No.
none.
It's funny that you bring that up because a lot of the other guys say the same thing. They go, I just feel like I'm moving better, and my wife comments that I feel more confident of making more friends and don't feel like obstructed when going to events, and work feels better, and this happened and this happened. It's very strange how it works, and like you said, it's not something that you can be really aware of until you actually get there, which is
Mm.
kind of strange. So it's one of those weird things that just like, oh, okay, now it's sort of happening, which is really weird. Like there's nothing that I can tell you as a coach and go, hey, you're going to feel great, but I can't
Mm.
tell you when that is because you've got a perceived lag effect of how you hold look at yourself is the
Yeah, and
is the main thing.
it snowballs. Once it starts, you think, "Oh, I've done that now," but it
Yeah,
actually gets better. So when I started to lose weight, I started to feel. By the time I came to you, I'd been working 6 months just doing, unscientific. Just the first two levers I pulled was just to move more and to eat a bit less, and that was working. And as you know, when you're overweight, if you do anything, it works for a while.
correct. Yeah,
You know, and that's why all the I see about that's why all these diets are all good in a way, because if you
yep,
yo-yoing or doing it for short periods of time or exercising, whatever it is, represents a substantial change from your baseline, and you're going to see that early progress. And you think, oh well, that's the experience of improvement.
yeah,
But then by sort of fluke, I started to notice I was slightly starting to run out of momentum. And at that point, I reconnected with you because I was going to the gym a little bit. I thought, no, I want to do this properly. And
yeah,
then it properly started.
yeah,
Once we started properly scientifically dial in, you were telling me protein wasn't where it needed to be. We started just with that was what you were great with, just little things that you added. I saw you doing that each time. Don't
yeah,
overload me on one occasion. You said the first thing, just get your protein there. Everything else keep the same. Just do that.
yeah,
And then you added something else, and then something else. Then we got into the strength stuff. We dealt with some early injuries, and then we started once we put on a bit of size or whatever, of strength and conditioning. Then we did the cut. And by
yeah.
that stage, I was very ready to do that,
Mm,
thinking that this is just going to be annoying. But it was bizarre. I've never been more interested in how my body and mind worked. It
yeah.
became an experiment, watching the
Mm.
way your body deals with, well, it is stress. It's stress. That's what it is. Watching the way your body does or doesn't deal well with stress. And it's
Mm.
been you're looking at your body from the outside in going, isn't it amazing that I turned 40 at that stage, seeing it react
Yeah.
appropriately. Oh God, okay, this is what you're expecting of me.
Yeah.
And watching it like it's got its own mind, it was really humbling to experience.
Yeah, it was very, very cool to watch on my end as well, just from seeing the little increments in the step in the process of just me feeding you each something new to do, get that tick off. It was like a little, I always like to look at someone and go, okay, what's the end goal here? The end goal is what you've achieved, just jacked, super shredded dad. And it's like, well, how do we get there? It's like, okay, we'll do these little leapfrogs. And then, like you said, you just got more and more interested because the changes were happening, everything outside of that as well. So that's really cool to hear. But what I want to sort of get to the bottom of, like, when we sort of, you had that little bit of break of working with me, like, what was how were you sort of telling yourself of like, what like, why you weren't progressing in that time?
You mean when I was deconditioning and putting on weight and
Yeah.
doing the
Yeah.
things we all do?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it's hard to remember. It feels like a different. I feel like I was a different person. I think
Absolutely.
that you in a given day, if you're reasonably busy, you've got a family, you've got work life. It doesn't matter what hours, even if you create hours like water, something will flood into it.
Mm.
And I realize that there's not you're not going to actually generate. So I guess the internal dialogue was that this is the dad bod and all that stuff. This is
Yep.
standard. This is how it goes. I'm a victim of the process, right? I'm a victim of the stage of life. But then I was going to work and telling my patients that you can't do that because
Yeah.
they're pretty clear that you reach this sort of point in life where you're going to go one or two ways. So I was living
Mm.
this, in some ways, a very hypocritical existence.
Yep.
It's not unique to me. You see lots of healthcare workers and then who are clearly very overweight or dealing with health issues that are lifestyle related, but having to tell their patients the diametric opposite. That's the fascinating part of the human mind, I guess. So
Yeah.
I guess I just this is the natural way at this stage of life. This is how it's supposed to be. If I'm overweight and I look stretched, almost as if that is telling people, and it sounds ridiculous. Almost telling people, "Oh, I'm making personal sacrifices for other
Yeah.
things." Like, you know what I mean? Which you think, "Oh, geez, he's going through it. He looks tired. He's been working all night."
I just got to project it on my body to make sure everyone knows.
Yeah, I know. I didn't actively think that, but I
Yeah.
did. I think that probably was going through my head as something to placate me.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's there's a lot of sort of pressure there. It's like, oh well, this is it. There's nothing else I can do about it. When
Yeah.
you can, like, you're the product of it. 40. There's no excuses. Two kids, massive job responsibilities.
Mm,
So when we sort of did sort of keep back on, you did sort of touch on just how the steps to getting you into this back into this condition. Like, what
mm.
was the biggest thing that you realized when we started back working together?
Sorry, the biggest thing I realized in terms of what the change in lifestyle.
Yeah, or just like, what was the biggest thing that you started to realize, like, when we started working together? Like, what was that first sort of shift that you noticed?
The shift in mindset, I think, was taking control of your food intake and your calories. And I don't mean that in terms of restriction per se. I mean being aware of what you take in.
Yep.
That was the biggest leap. I always knew that, but it does come down to pretty basic thermodynamic principles. You
Yep.
know, calories in, calories out, and that you need to. And it was just very interesting. You've sort of been a dietitian for me as well, to looking at, well, why did you do that? The way you dialed that or whatever, and then I'd go away and look at it. And I was just surprised to see how disconnected my diet was from what's required for, I guess, athletic performance, or for,
Yep.
and that the if you are moving, if you're active and you're trying to achieve a goal, your caloric targets are different from what the general public imagine
Correct.
is the right thing. The one that surprised me was the burden of fats and being in order to get the food volume in and the carbohydrates high enough. That it was quite remarkable. I didn't know that these things that are considered to be very healthy things, and they are, and they're important parts of your diet, how calorie dense they are and how awkward it can make meeting these other bits and pieces. And I like moving to a target. So actually having that set down for me, I was able to actually completely reset my
Mm.
diet and also the food that I ended up liking. So that's
Yeah.
changed. And I didn't think it would. And people, when people say that, you think they're just talking out their backside, like you've just forgotten what McDonald's tastes like. But and to a certain extent, that's probably true.
Yeah.
But you start getting very interested in good food. You know, like
No.
simple. It sounds like you just roll. I would have, if I'd heard this at 12 months ago, I would have rolled my eyes. But
Yeah.
you know,
I think
broccoli.
people are just unaware of like that the impact of that food is actually having on them because they've never actually, like yourself, done quote unquote clean eating for a period of time to actually get the benefits of feeling
Mm,
good. I think everyone's sort of just accepted like, oh, I'm meant to be tired and I'm meant to be slow and this happens because of
mm,
XYZ. Would you agree with
mm.
that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And during the cut period, it was amazing. You do get to a point where your body is become self-efficient at using
Yep.
the food. Is that you would actually notice where usually you eat a big meal and feel sluggish. That would be the general experience. Once you're moving more and you are tightening up your calories, and if you're in a cut particularly, you almost feel as though you're pouring in energy. You eat and
Mm.
you feel more energetic after the meal. I'd never really experienced that before, probably since
Yeah.
I was a kid, where you think, gee, I'm a bit flat, where before it meant, oh, I've overworked or I need a beer. Now it means, no, I need an apple or whatever. And then you were more energetic 45 minutes after eating, where before you're like, hang on, I
Mm.
mean, the Spanish, for example, created the siesta around being tired after
Yeah.
lunch.
Well, I
You
mean,
know,
Spanish food is insanely fat dense. The
yeah,
level
yeah.
of
But I got to the point where that would be after eating was the time I'd least
mm,
want to sleep. I want to go use it. It was quite bizarre.
yeah, cool. And through this sort of process of going from hate to use the word, but like dad bod to now I
I was
guess
fat, Adrian.
yeah, you're fat. There we
I
go.
was fat.
Okay, from fat to now jacked and shredded. Like, what was the thing that you were like most surprised about with the process?
Just the response my body had.
Yep.
I mean, I was comfortable. I think the reason I engage in the most is that, as you know, will. I'd like to think that when I train, my instinct is to push myself. Like I don't like
Absolutely, it
to
is.
go in and sort of hard. If I'm going to go in and spin my wheels, I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Now, but at the same time, I'm not going to go in there and do vomit sessions, all that sort of stuff.
No.
But if I'm going in there to get an outcome, and so I'm wanting to push myself to whatever, and so I was able to engage that really well with you because I trust the process. Like you explain it, right? Like these are what we're doing, and you talk about the mechanism, mechanical tension as the driver of hypertrophy. This is why you do it. I saw without you necessarily explaining to me, I saw you change the movements and change the exercises, and I could kind of after work for 2 or 3 months, I could figure out what you were doing. I was like, and I started to look forward to, and I still do look forward to, what are you going to do to me next? Like, I'm
Mm.
interested. What's the next movement?
Yep.
Even when I had an injury, you'd change it up or whatever. And because I used to think, I've got an injury, everything's going to fall in. I've had that anxiety, right?
For
Like
sure.
I've always had that because I was insecure. I still am insecure in your body because everyone's older than they were.
Yep.
And so you think, oh, I'm 40 now, I'm cactus. Like when I was
Yep.
30, I could do these things, or 25. That is a state of mind thing.
Mm.
And to a certain extent, there's truth in that if you get injured, it's a longer process back. But
Yep.
what I learned is that it just requires a little bit of agility in the way that you set up your training. You can
Mm.
keep going, you can nurse injuries and get better at the same time. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, no, definitely.
basically, well, it was gratifying to see your body work around things and respond. And
Yeah.
you could see that, like, oh, I'm still sore here or whatever, but I can do these movements with some slight adjustments, and I can see the change, I can see the progress. So injuries didn't become catastrophes.
Yep.
A session where I didn't get my max that I did last time was not a disaster. There's a reason for that. It's just the ebbs and flows, and over time you do
Yeah.
see that progress.
Yeah. Awesome. I think that's such a beautiful thing to come out of this is that you're just excited to sort of see, like you said, it's like an experiment. You go, wow, like there's just all this change. I change my food. This happens. I train a little bit harder. This is what happens. I shift my mindset from thinking that it's all over at 40. And I think that, no, this is a system in place and you keep the communication open. We understand exactly what we're moving towards. And it all just starts to intertwine and gets you excited. So that's
Yeah,
exactly what,
you
sorry,
get
go
that
ahead.
momentum. I did that. I didn't reduce how much I work. I didn't
No.
disengage with my family. I didn't shirk any of those responsibilities. And by dialing a few things that I could do on a daily basis, I lost 20 kilos in fat,
Yeah.
at least, and then put on size.
Yeah.
And I did that in 6 to 12 months. And like, I think I added to my clinical load. Yeah, I did.
Absolutely.
I,
Yeah.
I, I added another clinic in there as well.
Yeah.
So
Because you were just more efficient everywhere.
yeah, well, the changes that we got, I thought, oh, this is the sort of stuff you do when you disappear to Thailand for 6 months on some sort of retreat.
Yeah.
Where you're basically a military. That's what I thought it would require, some sort of
Yeah.
military intervention.
Mm.
But it's not true.
Yeah.
You just layering habits on top of each other.
Yep.
Um,
That's right.
as simple as that.
Mm. And so, with all this sort of being said, like, if I was a guy where you were before
Mm.
coaching, what would you tell him to do?
Sorry, if it is
So if
say,
I was in your position, I was fat, I was
mm,
unsure about the gym, I wanted to get into shape, didn't know why I felt this
how to
certain
get
way. Like,
started.
what would you tell me?
Yeah, I'd say two things. The first thing I would say, no, I'd say there's two things to start. Um, the time will come when you're going to need to engage you or someone like you,
Mm.
to take control of the reins when you're really trying to really hone in. But to get started, you do two things. You make a regularity of movement an absolute number one priority, almost to
Yep.
the point where it seems irrational. And it
Mm.
could be no more than 20 minutes or 25 minutes on a day, but you're going to do that a certain number of times a day every week. And then the outcome, the target there is not necessarily improvement. The target is doing it every single week for months. That's number one. And then the second thing, before you change anything with regard to diet, is become aware of what you're taking in. So that
Mm.
means just noting it down. And the
Yep.
way I recommend people to do it is to use AI. You just
Mm.
punch it in and it keeps a tally. But I'm sure there's heaps of apps and stuff that will do
Yeah.
exactly the same thing. So they're the two things I would say to get yourself started, because you'll start to notice changes immediately. And like I said, in the first interval, when you're just trying to get into the rhythm of feeling better rather than worse, you can do it on your own pretty easily. But then the time comes where if you really want to show some like life-changing sort of changes, that's when I'd engage you. And you'd say, right, at this time, that's when I'm going to pick up with a trainer.
Yeah. And then from that sort of point, like, what would just say you're having that conversation with that guy and they've gone through all the two steps that you just mentioned, but they're now ready for that coaching. Like, what would you sort of, I guess, from, all this experience that you've spoken about, like, what would you tell him about, the coaching and how it's like, why is it life changing? Like, what's the thing that's, the biggest takeaway that you could tell this
Oh,
person?
well, because you've got someone who's sharing the project with you. There's
Yeah.
someone to talk you through it. I mean, it's like anything else. Like if I'm working on a paper or whatever, well, I like my clinical work because it's a problem I'm solving with somebody else, and there's dialogue, and
Mm.
there's somebody else on the other side who comes with more expertise, but also a different outlook. And so challenging, you'll feel flat. Some weeks you'll feel flat. You feel like you're not getting anywhere. You're going backwards or whatever. You'll be reinvigorated by the literal back and forth with your trainer.
Yeah.
No man's an island, as they say.
Yeah.
It's a
So you just
problem. It's a problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
what it
That's
is.
it's what essentially I am as a coach, as a problem solver. It's like, well, I need to work out exactly where you currently are, and where you want to go.
And as
And
I say, the problem shared is a problem halved, and it's that it is your body and your physicality is a not problem in terms of a negative thing. I mean, a problem is in something to be solved, something to be figured out.
yeah, yeah,
And you can do some of that on your own, but then the time comes when you need other people involved. And that's where a
yeah,
trainer who does this obsessively, and I would say take on someone like you, a nut like you, who goes to
oh, mental.
conferences
I love it.
and has these, goes and it just spends each days agonizing over the science behind it. I
Mm,
just know that whatever you've given me, I know has come with a lot of experience and scientific backing, and I'm
yeah,
like, so I trust the process. And
yeah,
if you trust the process, you'll show up. You'll keep
yeah.
doing it.
Yes. When you were sort of trusting that process, like, what was, I guess, some of the points that you knew that it was working? Because it's all good and well sometimes to trust the process, but what were the sort of the, I guess you're probably going to repeat yourself, but what were the main, like, let's say 2 points that you're like, okay, this is actually working?
I think well, some of it is just you get stronger.
Yeah.
And also was improving on movements that I never had before, particularly leg-based
Yeah.
things, which I always struggled with. And I think we started to achieve a bit more in the last 3 to 6 months because I really focused in on your advice around those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And then the other one was often you were asking me to do things in the gym that to me previously would have been considered counterintuitive. So,
Yeah.
for example, got there one of my sessions that you've got at the moment is like 4 movements, 2 reps of it,
Yeah.
two sets of each.
Mm.
And I looked at it and I'm just like, what? Like, is that a warmer? And then you go in, but you motivate, you push yourself hard. And then I would walk out thinking that should have been a piece of piss, right? And
Yeah.
then I'm walking to my car going, oh, cactus, right? And I'd realized this because you had designed it so that while it was really short, you'd hit all of these muscle groups in a
Mm.
way that I just were counterintuitive to me because I'm not trained in that way. But then when I walked outside, nearly couldn't get to my car.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, oh, okay, right. There was some size
You got
behind.
me. You got me.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, that's, I mean, pretty much all the questions that I need, Dan. So again, thank you.
No worries. Yeah.
I just get so excited when, guys like yourself just flourish and do all the things, and, all the questions and stuff you've answered, I yeah, will be
Well,
100% useful to
I
other
don't, I'm
people.
not overstating when I say that it's been a completely life altering experience.
Appreciate that, man. Thank
And
you.
I mean that sincerely. And I'm not really sure of an aspect of my life that it hasn't impacted positively.